The wagon wheels creaked to a halt in front of the weathered timber building where desperate men paid gold for things they should never be able to buy. And 16-year-old Mara Whitfield knew with absolute certainty that her stepmother had finally made good on her promise to be rid of her. The journey from Sacramento to Chico had taken 3 days, and during every mile of dust and rattling wood, Mara had watched her stepmother's face remain as cold as winter stone. It was June of 1878, and the California heat pressed down on everything like a heavy blanket, making the air shimmer and dance above the dirt roads. Mara's hands were bound loosely with rope, not tight enough to cut circulation, but enough to make a statement about her lack of choices in this matter. Her father had been dead for 8 months now, killed in a mining accident that left nothing but debts and a young daughter her stepmother never wanted. "Get down," Cordelia said, her voice flat and businesslike. She was a handsome woman of 35 who had married Mara's father for security and found only disappointment. "We have an appointment." Mara's legs trembled as she climbed down from the wagon. The building before them was painted a faded red, and through the windows she could see men drinking even though it was barely past noon. A sign hung crooked above the door, but Mara could not bring herself to read it. She knew what places like this were, had heard the whispers in town about where girls disappeared to when their families could not or would not keep them. Cordelia grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a side entrance, away from the main saloon. They entered a dim hallway that smelled of tobacco and cheap perfume, and Cordelia knocked sharply on a door marked private. A woman answered, older than Cordelia, with painted lips and tired eyes that had seen too much of humanity's worst. She looked Mara up and down like she was evaluating livestock. "This the girl, this is her. 16, healthy, can read and write. No family but me, and I am relinquishing all claim." The words hit Mara like physical blows. She had known this was coming, had seen it building in every cruel word and withheld meal over the past months, but hearing it spoken so plainly made her knees weak. "I have a buyer already interested," the woman said, reaching into her desk and pulling out a small leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins. "A ranch owner outside town. He is looking for a wife, willing to pay well." "I do not care what he wants her for," Cordelia said, reaching for the pouch. "Our business is concluded." "Wait," Mara said, finding her voice for the first time since they left Sacramento. "Please, I can work. I can find employment. You do not have to do this." Cordelia turned to her, and for just a moment something that might have been guilt flickered across her face. Then it hardened again. "You are a burden I cannot afford. At least this way you will have a roof over your head." She took the pouch and walked out without looking back. Mara stood frozen, her mind unable to process that she had just been sold like a piece of furniture. The woman with the painted lips gestured to a chair. "Sit down, girl. The man will be here within the hour. His name is Nathan Cross, and you should consider yourself fortunate. He is young, owns his land free and clear, and from what I understand, he is decent enough. Could be far worse for you." Mara sat because her legs would not hold her anymore. She wanted to cry but found she had no tears left. She had cried them all in the weeks after her father died, when she realized Cordelia viewed her as nothing more than an unwanted expense. Now she just felt hollow, emptied out like a gourd. The hour passed in a blur of numb silence. Mara heard the sounds of the saloon through the walls, rough laughter and piano music that seemed to belong to a different world. She thought about running, but where would she go? She had no money, no family, no skills beyond basic housework and reading. The world of 1878 was not kind to young women alone. When the knock came, Mara's heart jumped into her throat. The woman opened the door and stepped back to admit a man who had to duck slightly to clear the frame. Nathan Cross was not what Mara expected. He was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of new spring grass. He was dressed like a working rancher in worn denim and a cotton shirt, his hat in his hands, and he looked profoundly uncomfortable to be there. He glanced at Mara, then quickly away, a flush creeping up his neck. "Mr. Cross," the woman said smoothly. "This is the girl I told you about, Mara Whitfield. As you can see, she is exactly as described." Nathan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Madam, could I have a moment to speak with Miss Whitfield? Privately." The woman's eyebrows rose. "That is irregular. I am aware. But I am paying good money here, and I would like a private conversation before we conclude anything." His voice was quiet but firm, with an edge that suggested he was not accustomed to having his requests denied. The woman considered, then nodded. "5 minutes. I will be right outside." She left, closing the door behind her with a pointed click. Nathan turned to Mara, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. She would not cower, no matter how afraid she was. If this was to be her fate, she would face it with what dignity she had left. "Miss Whitfield," he said slowly, "I need you to understand something before we go any further. I did not come here looking to buy a person. I do not believe any human being should be sold like property. When I heard about your situation, I came because I thought I might be able to help." Mara blinked, confused. "Help?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with how to explain. "I own a ranch about 10 miles outside Chico. It is a good spread with cattle and horses, and I run it alone since my parents died 2 years back. I could use help with the house and cooking, that much is true. But what I am offering you is not servitude. It is a choice." "A choice." Mara repeated the word like it was foreign. Nathan nodded. "If you come with me, you will have your own room, meals, and safety. You can help around the ranch, and I will pay you wages, same as I would any hired hand. If after some time you want to leave, you can. I will give you enough money to get wherever you want to go, and if you decide you want to stay, we can discuss a more permanent arrangement, but only if that is what you want, not because you feel you have no other option." Mara stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. "Why would you do this?" His green eyes met hers, and she saw genuine emotion there, something like sadness mixed with determination. "Because 3 years ago, my sister found herself in a similar situation. She was not as fortunate as I hope you will be. She did not survive the life she was forced into. I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone else, I would. So here I am, making you an offer. You can come with me, stay as long as you like, and leave whenever you want. Or if you prefer, I will pay your way to San Francisco or Sacramento or wherever you have people you can go to. The choice is yours, Miss Whitfield. Yours alone." Mara felt something crack inside her chest, the numbness giving way to a flood of emotion so intense she had to grip the arms of the chair to steady herself. No one had given her a choice in so long. Even her father, who had loved her, had chosen to remarry without consulting her, had brought Cordelia into their lives without asking how Mara felt. And Cordelia had chosen to dispose of her like unwanted baggage. But this stranger, this cowboy with kind eyes and calloused hands, was offering her something no one else had, the freedom to decide her own path. "I have nowhere else to go," she said quietly. "No people waiting for me anywhere. Cordelia was the last family I had, and she made it clear I am not wanted." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Then the offer stands. Come to the ranch. Take time to rest and figure out what you want. No pressure, no expectations beyond honest work for honest pay. And Mara," he added, using her first name with a gentleness that made her throat tight. "I want you to know that you will be safe there. I am offering you employment and shelter, nothing more unless you decide otherwise. Your room will have a lock on the inside. You will have privacy and respect. I give you my word." She searched his face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was too good to be true. But all she saw was sincerity and a deep sadness that suggested his story about his sister was painfully real. "All right," she whispered. "I will come with you." He nodded, relief visible in the way his shoulders relaxed. "Thank you for trusting me. I know that cannot be easy right now." He went to the door and opened it, speaking to the woman waiting outside. "We are agreed. Here is the payment we discussed." The exchange of money happened quickly, and Mara felt a strange detachment as she watched coins change hands for her life. But then Nathan turned back to her and held out his hand, not to grab or pull, but as an offer of support. "Ready?" he asked. She stood on shaking legs and walked toward him. She did not take his hand, not yet, but she appreciated that he offered. They left through the side door, emerging into the bright California sunshine that made Mara squint after the dimness inside. Nathan's horse was tied to a post, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. Next to it was a wagon, simple but well-maintained, with a barrel of supplies in the back. "I had to bring the wagon today for ranch supplies," he explained, helping her up onto the bench seat without touching her more than necessary. "Usually I just ride Thunder here." He patted the bay's neck affectionately. "The ranch is about an hour out. We can talk on the way, or if you prefer silence, that is fine too." They headed out of Chico, leaving behind the dusty streets and weathered buildings. The landscape opened up into rolling hills dotted with oak trees, golden grass rippling in the breeze like waves on an ocean. It was beautiful in a stark way, so different from the mining towns where Mara had spent most of her life. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Mara watched the countryside roll by, trying to process everything that had happened in the span of a single hour. She had been sold by the only family she had left, and then given freedom by a complete stranger. Her mind could not quite reconcile the two realities. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "I should tell you more about the ranch, so you know what to expect. It is called the Triple Cross, named for my father and his two brothers who started it. My uncles moved east years ago, leaving it to my parents. After they died in a fever outbreak, it came to me. I have about 200 head of cattle, a dozen horses, chickens, and a milk cow named Betsy who has a terrible attitude but makes excellent butter." Despite everything, Mara felt the corner of her mouth twitch. A cow with an attitude. "She has strong opinions about when she should be milked and will kick over the bucket if you are late. You will meet her soon enough." He glanced at Mara, and she saw warmth in his smile. "The house is not fancy, but it is solid. 2 bedrooms upstairs, kitchen, and sitting room downstairs. There is a root cellar and a good well. I have been managing the cooking and cleaning myself, but I will admit I am not talented in either area. Mostly I eat beef and beans and whatever vegetables do not die in my garden." "I can cook," Mara said softly. It was the first thing she had offered, the first step toward defining herself in this new situation. "My mother taught me before she died. I was 8 when we lost her." "I am sorry," Nathan said, and the words carried genuine sympathy. "Losing a parent young is a hard thing. I thought I was grown when mine passed, but it still felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet." They fell into silence again, but it was more comfortable now, less weighted. Mara found herself studying Nathan from the corner of her eye. He sat relaxed on the wagon bench, reins held loosely in capable hands. He had the weathered look of someone who spent his days outdoors, with fine lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting into the sun. His profile was strong without being harsh, and there was something steady about him, like a tree with deep roots. She thought about what he had said about his sister and felt a pang of sorrow for a girl she would never meet. Whatever had happened to her had marked Nathan deeply enough that he was willing to pay a substantial sum to save a stranger from a similar fate. That spoke to a quality of character Mara had rarely encountered. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, and Mara felt her breath catch. It was nestled in a small valley with a creek running through it, the water glinting silver in the afternoon sun. The house was exactly as Nathan described, a sturdy two-story structure built from timber with a wide porch wrapping around the front. There were several outbuildings, a barn that looked freshly painted, and corrals where horses grazed peacefully. "Welcome to the Triple Cross," Nathan said quietly, pulling the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "Your new home, for as long as you want it to be." Mara climbed down from the wagon, her legs unsteady from more than just the journey. She looked at the house, at the land stretching in every direction, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as hope. Nathan unhitched Thunder and led him toward the barn, calling back over his shoulder. "Go ahead and look around inside. I will be in shortly to show you your room and help you get settled." Mara climbed the porch steps, each board solid beneath her feet. She pushed open the front door and stepped into a large kitchen that was clearly the heart of the house. An iron stove dominated one wall, with shelves above it holding mismatched dishes and cups. A sturdy wooden table sat in the center with 4 chairs around it. Through a doorway, she could see a sitting room with a worn sofa and chairs arranged around a stone fireplace. Everything was clean but lived in, with the slightly disorganized look of a man managing on his own. Dishes were stacked neatly but haphazardly, and books were piled on various surfaces as though Nathan read wherever he happened to sit down. She heard his footsteps on the porch and turned as he entered, carrying her small bag that had been in the wagon. She had almost forgotten about it, the pathetic collection of her few belongings that Cordelia had allowed her to pack. "Let me show you upstairs," Nathan said, heading for a narrow staircase along one wall. Mara followed, her hand trailing along the smooth banister worn by years of use. The upstairs hallway was short with 2 doors facing each other. Nathan opened the one on the right. "This is your room. It is not much, but you are welcome to change anything you like." Mara stepped inside and felt her throat tighten. The room was small but charming, with a real bed covered in a wedding ring quilt, a dresser with a mirror, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a window that looked out over the valley. On the dresser sat a small vase with wildflowers, clearly picked recently. "I thought it might be nice," Nathan said, sounding embarrassed, "to have some color. My mother always kept flowers in the house." Mara walked to the window and looked out at the land painted gold by the late afternoon sun. Behind her, she heard Nathan move to the door. "There is the lock I mentioned," he said, demonstrating a sturdy bolt on the inside of the door. "For your privacy. I am across the hall and I sleep light, so if you need anything during the night, just knock. Otherwise, I usually rise around dawn to start chores. You can join me when you are ready, no rush." He set her bag down and turned to leave, but Mara's voice stopped him. "Nathan." He paused, looking back at her. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt inadequate for what she was trying to express. "For giving me a choice. For treating me like a person. I do not know how to repay that kindness." His expression softened. "You do not need to repay anything, Mara. Just live your life as you see fit. That is all I want." He nodded and left, his footsteps retreating down the stairs. Mara stood alone in her room with a lock on the inside and flowers on the dresser, and finally allowed herself to cry. But these tears were different from the ones she had shed after her father's death. These carried confusion and fear still, but also relief and something that might become gratitude once she had time to understand everything that had happened. She cried until she was empty, then washed her face in the basin and unpacked her few belongings. 3 dresses, 2 worn thin from use, a hairbrush that had been her mother's, a book of poems her father had given her for her 15th birthday, a small wooden bird he had carved for her when she was a child. That was the sum total of her possessions, everything she had to show for 16 years of life. But as she placed them carefully in the dresser drawers, smoothing out the dresses and setting the wooden bird on top where she could see it, Mara felt something shift inside her. These things were hers. This room was hers. Her choices, whatever she decided to make them, would be hers. It was more than she had dared hope for this morning. When she went downstairs, she found Nathan at the stove, looking with dismay at a pot of something that might have been beans. "I swear I followed the same recipe as last time," he said, stirring dubiously. "But it looks like mud and smells questionable." Mara moved closer and peered into the pot. "Did you soak them overnight? Was I supposed to?" She bit back a smile. "Yes, dried beans need to soak or they will be hard and take forever to cook." Nathan looked at her with such earnest confusion that she did laugh, a small sound that surprised them both. "All right," she said, making a decision. "Let me cook dinner. You have given me shelter and safety. The least I can do is keep you from poisoning yourself." "I would be grateful," he admitted. "Though I want to be clear, this is your choice. You do not have to earn your keep through cooking." "I know," Mara said, and realized she meant it. She understood that he would feed her regardless of whether she lifted a finger. But she wanted to do this, wanted to contribute, wanted to feel useful after months of being made to feel like a burden. "I want to help. Please, let me." He stepped back from the stove. "Then the kitchen is yours. I will go finish the evening chores and be back in about an hour." "Will that give you enough time?" "Plenty." After Nathan left, Mara explored the kitchen more thoroughly, taking stock of what was available. She found flour and lard for biscuits, eggs from the chickens, some bacon that would need to be used soon, and vegetables from the garden. She set to work with a sense of purpose she had not felt in a long time. Cooking had always been a meditation for her, a way to feel close to her mother, who had taught her the basics, before dying of pneumonia one terrible winter. As Mara's hands moved through familiar motions, mixing dough and slicing vegetables, she felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. By the time Nathan returned, the kitchen smelled of baking biscuits and frying bacon. He stopped in the doorway, a look of surprise and something deeper crossing his face. "That smells incredible," he said. "I honestly cannot remember the last time this kitchen smelled like anything other than burnt coffee and desperation." Mara smiled despite herself. "Sit down. It is almost ready." They ate at the kitchen table as the sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The food was simple but well prepared, and Mara felt a flicker of pride at the appreciative sounds Nathan made. "This is delicious," he said around a mouthful of biscuit. "Truly. I think I have been half starving myself without realizing it." "You just needed someone to show you how beans work," Mara said, and was rewarded with his laugh, deep and genuine. They talked as they ate, carefully at first, then with growing ease. Nathan told her about the ranch, how his father had built it up from nothing and how he was working to honor that legacy. He talked about his plans to expand the herd, about the neighboring ranchers who were decent folk, about the town of Chico and the people there. Mara listened, offering little about her own past. It was still too painful, too raw. But she asked questions about the ranch work, about what her days might look like, and Nathan answered with patience and detail. You can be as involved as you want, he said. Some people prefer to stay close to the house, managing the domestic side. But if you are interested in learning about the livestock or horses, I am happy to teach you. My mother used to ride out with my father all the time. She said she did not marry a ranch to stay indoors. I have never ridden a horse, Mara admitted. Then we will change that if you want. Thunder is gentle as a lamb, despite his dramatic name. He was my mother's horse before he was mine. After dinner, Mara insisted on cleaning up while Nathan went to check on the animals one last time before bed. She washed dishes in water heated on the stove, looking out the window at the darkening landscape. Stars were beginning to emerge, more than she had ever seen in Sacramento, a blanket of light across the sky. When Nathan came back in, he found her still at the window. "Beautiful, is it not?" He said quietly, "I never get tired of that view. Out here away from town lights you can see forever." "It is overwhelming," Mara said honestly. "Everything is so vast, I feel very small." "Small or free?" he asked, and the question struck something deep inside her. "Maybe both," she whispered. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, then Nathan stirred. "I should let you rest. Today has been enormous for you. Sleep as late as you need tomorrow. We can ease you into the routine slowly." Mara nodded and climbed the stairs to her room. She changed into her nightgown, locked the door as much out of habit as necessity, and slipped under the quilt. The bed was comfortable, the room quiet, and through the window she could hear the soft sounds of the night: crickets singing, a distant owl calling, the wind moving through the grass. She thought about Nathan downstairs, this strange cowboy who had given her choice when she expected only demands. She thought about his sister, the one who had not been fortunate enough to escape whatever fate had claimed her. She thought about her stepmother and felt, not anger exactly, but a kind of sad understanding. Cordelia had never wanted to be cruel. She had simply wanted Mara gone, and she had taken the path that required the least from her. But Nathan had chosen a harder path, one that required compassion and trust and a willingness to be vulnerable to a stranger. Mara did not understand why yet, but she was grateful for it. As she drifted toward sleep, she felt the tight knot of fear in her chest loosen just slightly. She was not safe, not yet, because safety was something built slowly over time. But she was safer than she had been this morning, and that was enough for now. The days that followed developed a rhythm that Mara found soothing in its predictability. She woke each morning to the sound of Nathan moving around downstairs, starting coffee and heading out to begin chores. At first, she stayed in bed, uncertain of her place in this household. But by the third day, she rose with him, dressing quickly and going down to start breakfast before he came back in. They fell into an easy partnership in the kitchen. Nathan would come in smelling of hay and horses, wash up at the pump outside, and sit down to whatever Mara had prepared. She discovered he was not picky, grateful for anything that did not taste burnt or was not beans from a can. "You are going to spoil me," he said one morning, savoring eggs and fresh bread. "I will not be able to go back to my bachelor cooking." "Then it is good I am here," Mara replied, surprised by her own boldness. After breakfast, Nathan would head back out and Mara would clean the kitchen before tackling other household tasks. The house had been maintained but not truly cared for, and she found satisfaction in bringing it back to life. She scrubbed floors and washed windows, beat dust from rugs and organized shelves. She found linens that needed mending and sat on the porch in the afternoon with a sewing basket she discovered in a closet, likely her mother's. Nathan never asked her to do any of it. In fact, he seemed almost embarrassed by how much she was accomplishing. "You do not have to do all this," he said, coming in one afternoon to find her polishing the furniture in the sitting room. I hired you for cooking, not to work yourself to exhaustion." "I am not exhausted," Mara said, and realized it was true. She was tired at the end of each day, but it was a good tiredness, the kind that came from useful work rather than the heavy despair she had carried in Sacramento. "I like having something to do. It makes me feel less like a guest and more like I belong here." Nathan considered that. "All right. But please, take time for yourself too. Read, rest, explore. This is your home, not just your workplace." That word home sent a flutter through Mara's chest. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. True to his word, Nathan began teaching her about the ranch. He showed her how to feed the chickens and collect eggs, laughing at her wariness around the rooster who ruled the coop with aggressive authority. "That is General Grant," Nathan said, gesturing to the bad-tempered bird. "He thinks he won the war single-handedly and demands appropriate respect. Just carry a stick when you are in his territory, and you will be fine." Mara learned to milk Betsy, the opinionated cow, and discovered Nathan had not been exaggerating about her personality. The first time Mara was late with the afternoon milking, Betsy mooed with such indignation that Nathan came running from the barn thinking something was wrong. "I forgot to watch the time," Mara said, flustered and trying to avoid Betsy's annoyed tail swishing. Nathan grinned. "She has trained me well. I am usually very punctual now." But the thing Mara wanted most to learn was riding. She watched with envy as Nathan moved around the ranch on Thunder, the two of them clearly comfortable partners. She wanted that freedom, that ability to move across the land without being confined to walking distance from the house. Nathan noticed her watching and, one morning after breakfast, led her out to the barn. "Today seems like a good day for your first riding lesson if you are interested." Mara's heart leaped. "Yes, please." He brought out a pretty chestnut mare with a white star on her forehead. "This is Clover. She was my mother's second horse, very gentle and patient. She has not been ridden much since my mother passed, but I have been getting her ready for you. For me." Mara whispered. "If you stay, you will need a horse of your own," Nathan said simply. "And even if you leave, knowing how to ride will serve you well. It is a useful skill." He showed her how to approach Clover, letting the horse learn her scent and presence. Mara stroked the soft nose, marveling at how large the animal was up close. "She is beautiful," Mara breathed. Nathan saddled Clover with easy competence, explaining each step as he went. Then he helped Mara mount, his hands careful and respectful as he boosted her up. Sitting in the saddle felt impossibly high and precarious, but also thrilling. "How does it feel?" Nathan asked, holding Clover's bridle. "Terrifying and wonderful," Mara admitted, gripping the saddle horn. He smiled. "That sounds about right. Let us start slow." For the next hour, Nathan led Clover around the corral, teaching Mara how to sit, how to hold the reins, how to communicate with the horse through pressure and balance. He was a patient teacher, never rushing, always encouraging. When Mara finally managed a full circuit of the corral on her own, controlling Clover without his help, she felt such a surge of accomplishment that she laughed out loud. "I am doing it," she called, her face flushed with pleasure. Nathan stood in the center of the corral, his expression warm. "You are a natural. My mother would have liked you." The comment made Mara's chest tighten with emotion. She slowed Clover to a stop and dismounted with Nathan's help, her legs shaky from the unaccustomed exercise. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me, for trusting me with your mother's horse." "Thank you for being willing to learn," he replied. "I think Clover was getting lonely in the barn. She is meant to be ridden, not just kept as a memory." They walked back to the house together, Clover following placidly behind. Mara felt something shifting between them, a growing comfort that went beyond employer and employee. They were becoming friends, she realized, and the thought filled her with a warmth she had not expected. The weeks passed, June sliding into July with scorching heat that made the work harder but no less satisfying. Mara's hands, which had been soft from disuse in Sacramento, developed calluses from work. Her skin tanned from time outdoors, and she felt herself growing stronger, more capable. She continued her riding lessons, graduating from the corral to short rides around the immediate ranch land. Nathan always rode with her, pointing out landmarks and telling stories about the land. He showed her the creek where he used to fish as a boy, the stand of oaks where his father proposed to his mother, the high point where you could see all the way to town on a clear day. "You love it here," Mara observed one afternoon as they sat beneath the oaks, letting the horses rest. "It is the only place I have ever wanted to be," Nathan said. "Some people dream of cities or travel. I have always just wanted this. Land, animals, honest work. A simple life, I suppose." "Simple does not mean less valuable," Mara said softly. "My father worked in mines, always chasing the next big strike. He spent his whole life underground, dreaming of gold. But he never found it. I think he would have been happier doing something like this, building something that lasted." It was the first time she had really spoken about her father, and Nathan seemed to sense the significance. "Tell me about him," he said gently. And Mara did. She talked about her father's laugh, his kindness, the way he used to carve her little animals out of scrap wood. She talked about how he changed after her mother died, becoming quieter, more desperate to strike it rich so he could give Mara a better life. She talked about Cordelia, trying to be fair, explaining that her stepmother had not been cruel at first, just distant, and that poverty and frustration had hardened her into someone capable of selling a stepdaughter she never wanted. Nathan listened without interruption, his green eyes steady and compassionate. When she finished, her voice hoarse from talking, he was quiet for a moment. "Your father loved you," he said finally. "That is clear in every story you tell, and what Cordelia did was not your fault. You know that, right? You were not a burden. You were a child who lost both parents and deserved better than what you received." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I did something wrong, if I could have been different, made her like me more." "No," Nathan's voice was firm. "That is the thinking of someone who has been blamed for things beyond her control. Cordelia made her choices. You did not force her hand. You were 16, alone and grieving. She was an adult who chose the easy path instead of the right one." The words settled into Mara like stones dropped into deep water, sinking down to places that needed their weight. She had been carrying guilt without realizing it, a sense that her existence had been the problem. But Nathan was right. She had been a child in an impossible situation, and the failure belonged to the adult who should have protected her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saying that, for seeing me as more than just a problem to be solved. You were never a problem, Mara. You are a person who deserves kindness and a chance to build the life you want." He stood and offered her his hand. "Come on, let us head back before the afternoon gets too hot." She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. His grip was warm and strong, and he held on for just a moment longer than necessary before releasing her to Mount Clover. As they rode back to the ranch house, Mara found herself watching Nathan, noticing things she had not let herself see before. The way he sat his horse with unconscious grace. The line of his shoulders, strong from physical work. The kindness in his eyes when he looked at her, a gentleness that made her feel seen and valued. She was starting to care for him, she realized with a flutter of alarm. Not just gratitude for what he had done, but genuine affection for who he was. He was good in a way that seemed effortless, treating animals and people with equal respect. He worked hard but took time to appreciate beauty. A sunset, a well-cooked meal, a horse running free in a pasture. He had suffered loss, but let it make him more compassionate rather than bitter. And he had given her the one thing she needed most, the freedom to discover who she might become when she was not drowning in fear and desperation. By August, Mara felt like a different person than the terrified girl who had arrived at the Triple Cross 8 weeks earlier. She woke each morning with purpose, her days filled with work she found meaningful. She had gained weight from regular meals, and her reflection in the mirror showed a young woman with clear eyes and a sunburned nose, no longer hollowed out by grief and uncertainty. She could now ride Clover without Nathan's supervision, taking short trips on her own to check fence lines or simply enjoy the freedom of movement. She had transformed the house into something that felt like a home, with curtains in the windows and fresh flowers on the table. She had baked pies and bread, mended all of Nathan's shirts, and organized the chaos of his account books into something approaching order. But more than the physical changes, something had shifted in how she viewed herself. She was no longer just surviving, she was living. She laughed at Nathan's terrible jokes, sang while she worked, and felt joy in small things like Betsy finally accepting her presence without complaint or General Grant grudgingly letting her pass unchallenged. And through it all, Nathan remained constant. He praised her cooking but never demanded it. He taught her ranch skills but never pushed her beyond her comfort. He was respectful of her space, never entering her room or suggesting anything inappropriate. He kept his word in every way, treating her as an equal rather than property or a subordinate. But Mara saw the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. There was something in his expression that went beyond friendly regard, a warmth that made her heart beat faster. She caught him watching her hang laundry, reading on the porch, laughing at something the chickens did. And in those moments, his face held such tenderness that it took her breath away. She wondered if he felt what she was beginning to feel. This growing awareness of each other, this pull that had nothing to do with the circumstances that brought them together, and everything to do with who they were becoming to each other. One evening in mid-August, they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson. The day's heat was finally breaking, a breeze carrying the scent of dry grass and distant water. "Mara," Nathan said quietly, "I want to talk to you about something, and I need you to know you can be completely honest with me." Her heart jumped. "All right." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You have been here 2 months now. You have more than fulfilled any expectation I might have had, and I hope you feel you have found some peace here. But I want to check in with you about the original offer I made. Do you want to stay? Or would you prefer to take the money I promised and make a new start somewhere else?" "There is no wrong answer, Mara. I just need to know what you truly want." Mara looked at him, at this man who had saved her and then given her space to save herself. She thought about leaving, about taking wages and heading to San Francisco or some other city where she might build an independent life. It was possible now in a way it had not been when she was desperate and alone. But the thought of leaving the Triple Cross, of walking away from this place and this person, felt like tearing out something essential. "I want to stay," she said, and knew with absolute certainty that it was true. "If you will have me, I would like to stay." Relief flooded Nathan's face, so clear and unguarded that Mara's breath caught. "I am glad," he said, his voice rough. "I have been dreading this conversation, afraid you would choose to leave. This place has felt more like a home in the past 2 months than it has since my parents died. And that is because of you." "Nathan," Mara said, her heart pounding, "why did you really come for me that day, the truth?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the darkening landscape. When he spoke, his words came slowly, as though he was choosing each one with care. My sister's name was Alina. She was 18 when our parents arranged her marriage to a man who seemed respectable but turned out to be violent and controlling. When she tried to leave him, he sold her to a brothel to punish her. By the time I found out and came for her, it was too late. She had been there less than a month, but it broke something in her. She died by her own hand 3 days after I brought her home. Mara felt tears streaming down her face. Nathan, I am so sorry. I should have done more, should have checked on her sooner, should have seen the signs. But I was young and stupid and trusted that marriage was supposed to be difficult at first. I failed her. His voice cracked. When I heard about a girl being sold in Chico, another 16-year-old with no one to help her, I could not walk away. I thought if I could save you, maybe it would mean Alina's death meant something. Maybe I could keep one girl from ending up like my sister. Mara reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You did save me. But Nathan, what happened to Alina was not your fault, just like what Cordelia did was not mine. We were both victims of people who made terrible choices. But you chose differently. You chose compassion. You gave me a chance to heal, to become someone I could not have been otherwise. That matters. It matters so much. He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face, his eyes bright with unshed tears. You matter, Mara, not as a symbol of my sister or a chance for redemption. You matter because of who you are, strong, kind, capable, resilient. You have transformed this ranch, but more than that, you have transformed me. I was going through motions before you came, working to forget rather than working toward something. Now I look forward to every morning because I know you will be there. I appreciate sunsets more because I see them with you. Food tastes better, work feels lighter, and this house finally feels like a home again. Mara's heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. Nathan, what are you saying? I am saying I care about you, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. More than I should, more than is probably wise given how we met, but I cannot help it. You have become essential to me, and the thought of you leaving was terrifying, not because I would lose help with the ranch, but because I would lose you. Your presence, your laugh, the way you hum while you cook, how you talk to the animals like they understand you, all of it. I would miss all of it, because I would miss you. Tears were flowing freely down Mara's face now, but they were different from any she had cried before. These were tears of joy, of overwhelming relief at hearing spoken aloud what she had been feeling but was too afraid to name. I care about you too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, trying to convince myself it was just gratitude or dependence. But it is not. It is you, Nathan. The way you treat every living thing with respect, your patience and kindness, your strength that is gentle rather than harsh. The way you make me feel safe and seen and valued. I was not looking for this, was not prepared for it, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore. Nathan lifted his free hand and gently wiped the tears from her cheek, his touch feather light. I do not want you to feel obligated because of what I did. I need you to know that. Your feelings have to be yours, not something you think you owe me. They are mine, Mara said firmly. Yes, you saved me and I am grateful, but this is not gratitude, Nathan. This is something else entirely. This is me, at 18, choosing to care about a man who has shown me what kindness really looks like. A man who gave me time to heal and space to grow and never asked for anything in return. A man I want to build a life with if he will have me. Nathan's breath hitched. Are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying yes, Mara said, her voice growing stronger with certainty. Yes to staying, yes to building a life here, yes to you, if that is what you want too. It is everything I want, Nathan said, and then he leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. But Mara did not pull back. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "I should probably do this properly," Nathan said, sliding off the porch bench to kneel in front of her. "Mara Whitfield, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Not because of circumstances or obligation, but because I love you and cannot imagine my future without you in it," Mara laughed, the sound bright and full of joy. "Yes, Nathan Cross. Yes, I will marry you, because I love you too with everything I am." He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her close as the last light faded from the sky. They stood there together, wrapped in each other and the warm August night, two people who had found each other through tragedy but chosen each other through love. The wedding took place in September, a simple ceremony in Chico with neighbors and a few of Nathan's friends as witnesses. Mara wore a dress she made herself from fabric Nathan insisted on buying, pale blue with lace at the collar. She had never felt more beautiful. Nathan wore his best suit, his dark hair combed back, his eyes never leaving Mara's face as they spoke their vows. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with such tenderness that several people in the small crowd wiped their eyes. They celebrated with dinner at the hotel in town, but both were eager to return to the ranch, to the home that was now truly theirs together. On the ride back, Mara sat close to Nathan on the wagon bench, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. "Happy?" he asked softly. "More than I knew was possible," she replied. 3 months ago I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to hope for. And now I have everything." That night, in the room that was now theirs, Nathan was patient and gentle, making their first time together more about connection than passion. He worshipped her with his touch, whispering how much he loved her, how beautiful she was, how lucky he felt. Mara gave herself to him freely, finding joy in the intimacy, in the way their bodies learned each other. Afterward, lying in his arms with the window open to let in the cool night air, Mara felt a completeness she had never known. She was loved. She was safe. She was home. Life on the Triple Cross settled into a new rhythm, one that reflected their partnership in every way. They worked side by side during the day, Mara having graduated from housework to full participation in ranch operations. She helped with roundups, learned to rope cattle, and became skilled at breaking young horses. Nathan treated her as an equal partner in all decisions about the ranch. They discussed which bulls to buy, how to manage the breeding program, when to sell cattle, and how to negotiate prices. Mara discovered she had a head for numbers and took over the account books completely, finding ways to save money and increase efficiency. But they also made time for each other, for the relationship that was the foundation of everything else. They rode out together in the evenings, exploring the boundaries of their land. They read aloud to each other by the fire in winter. They made love with increasing passion and familiarity, learning what brought each other pleasure, and they talked, endless conversations about everything and nothing. Nathan told her about his childhood, his parents, his dreams for the future. Mara opened up about her past, finding that sharing the painful parts with someone who loved her made them easier to carry. By the following spring, Mara knew she was pregnant. She told Nathan one morning in the barn, unable to wait for a more romantic setting. He had been mucking out a stall, and when she said the words, he dropped the pitchfork and stared at her. "A baby," he whispered. "A baby," she confirmed, smiling at his shocked expression. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down gently. "Mara, you have made me the happiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Mara was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. Nathan hovered worriedly, trying to help but mostly just getting in her way. But as she moved into the second trimester, she felt better, stronger. Her belly swelled, and she loved the feeling of the baby moving inside her. This new life they had created together. Nathan was attentive to the point of being comical, insisting she rest more, refusing to let her do heavy work. Mara tolerated his fussing because she knew it came from love, but she also ignored him when necessary, knowing her body's limits better than he did. In November of 1879, their son was born after a long night of labor. Nathan stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and wailing, the midwife placed him in Mara's arms. "A boy," the woman said with satisfaction. "Healthy and strong." Nathan looked at his son with wonder, reaching out to touch the impossibly small fingers. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Mara, look what you did. You are amazing." They named him Thomas after Mara's father, with a middle name of Nathaniel. Tommy, as he quickly became known, was a good baby, curious and alert. Nathan was a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor when Tommy was fussy, singing off key lullabies that somehow worked. Watching Nathan with their son, Mara fell in love with him all over again. He was gentle and patient, treating Tommy with the same respect he showed everyone. He talked to the baby constantly, explaining what he was doing, introducing him to the horses and cattle as though Tommy could understand. "He is going to grow up knowing he is loved," Nathan said one night, holding Tommy while Mara rested. "He will never doubt that he has a place in this world, people who want him. I promise you that." Mara felt tears sting her eyes, remembering her own childhood after her mother died, the slow erosion of security that ended with Cordelia selling her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving him what I lost, for giving us all a real family." "You gave me that," Nathan said softly. "You took a broken man rattling around in an empty house and made him whole again. Tommy is a gift, but so are you. Every single day, you are a gift." The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from 200 head of cattle to nearly 500. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, good men who respected Mara as much as Nathan. Tommy grew into a sturdy boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's dark hair. He toddled after Nathan from the time he could walk, wanting to help with every task. Nathan was patient, giving him small jobs that made Tommy feel important. When Tommy was 3, Mara became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and while the pregnancy was still uncomfortable, she managed it better. In 1883, they welcomed a daughter they named Claire. She had Mara's dark eyes and Nathan's smile, and Tommy was immediately protective of his baby sister. The house that had once been so quiet now rang with children's laughter and the chaos of family life. Nathan built an addition to give the children their own rooms, and Mara filled the house with love and warmth. They hosted dinners for neighbors, attended church socially, and became respected members of the Chico community. Sometimes Mara thought about Cordelia and wondered what had become of her stepmother. She felt no anger anymore, just a kind of sad pity for a woman who had been so hardened by life that she could not see the value of love and family. Mara had sent her a letter once, shortly after marrying Nathan, letting Cordelia know she was well and bore no ill will. She never received a response and did not expect to. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Nathan surprised Mara with a gift, a beautiful mare, gray with dapples like clouds. "Her name is Silver," he said, leading the horse to where Mara stood on the porch. "She is yours." Clover has earned her retirement, and I thought you deserved a horse as special as you are." Mara ran her hands over Silver's silky coat, her heart full. "She is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you," Nathan said, pulling her close, "for saying yes that day on the porch. For choosing me, choosing this life. I know it has not always been easy. Ranch life is hard work, and I cannot give you fancy things or city excitement." "Nathan Cross," Mara said firmly, looking up at him, "you gave me everything that matters. You gave me choice when I had none. You gave me respect when I had been treated as worthless. You gave me love when I thought I would never feel it. And you gave me a family, a home, a purpose. I would not trade this life for anything." He kissed her then, deep and loving, and Tommy made exaggerated gagging sounds from where he watched with Claire on his hip. "Papa is kissing Mama again," he announced to his sister, who giggled. Nathan broke the kiss and grinned at his son. "And I will keep kissing her every day for the rest of my life. You two better get used to it." Time continued its steady march. Tommy grew tall and strong, learning everything Nathan could teach him about ranching. He had his father's way with animals and his mother's head for business. Claire was more bookish, though she could ride as well as any of them. She loved school and talked about becoming a teacher someday. Nathan's hair began to show threads of silver at his temples, and Mara found faint lines around her eyes when she looked in the mirror. But they still moved together with the easy partnership they had built, still talked late into the night, still made love with passion tempered by deep affection. On the 10th anniversary of the day Nathan brought Mara to the Triple Cross, they rode out together to the stand of oaks where they had first really talked, first begun to understand that they were becoming more than employer and employee. The children were old enough to be left with the ranch hands for an afternoon, and Nathan and Mara were eager for time alone together. They spread a blanket under the trees and lay side by side, looking up through the leaves at the blue California sky. Mara reached over and took Nathan's hand, lacing their fingers together just as she had that first time on the porch. "You remember this place?" she asked. "I remember everything about those early days," Nathan said. "How scared you were at first, how you slowly started to trust me. The first time I heard you laugh, I felt like I had won a prize more valuable than gold. I was so certain that day in town that my life was over," Mara said softly. "I could not imagine a future beyond fear and survival. And then you walked in and offered me something I did not even know existed, the chance to choose my own path." Nathan turned onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. "And what path did you choose?" "This one," Mara said, meeting his eyes. "You, this ranch, our family. The best path I could have imagined. You kept your promise, Nathan. You gave me choices, respected them, and never made me feel like I owed you anything. And in the process, you gave me everything. You gave me just as much," he said. "You took a lonely man going through the motions and reminded him what it meant to truly live. You filled this house with love and laughter. You became my partner in every sense of the word. And you loved me even when I was just a cowboy with more heart than sense, trying to save a girl I did not know. You were never just anything," Mara said, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "You were exactly who I needed. And now, looking back, I cannot regret what happened, even the painful parts, because they brought me here to you, to this life. If I could go back and change things, make Cordelia love me or my father live longer, I do not think I would, because then I might not have ended up here." Nathan kissed her palm. "I hate that you had to suffer to get here, but I am grateful every day that you did end up here, that I had the chance to know you, love you, build a life with you." They stayed under the oaks until the sun began to sink toward the horizon, talking about their children, their dreams for the future, the small and large joys of their life together. When they finally rode back to the ranch, they were greeted by Tommy and Claire running out to meet them, full of stories about their day. Nathan swung Claire up into his arms while Tommy grabbed Mara's hand, both children talking over each other. Mara looked at her family, at this impossible, beautiful life she had built from the ashes of despair, and felt such overwhelming gratitude that her eyes burned with tears. That night, after the children were in bed, Nathan and Mara sat on the porch as they had so many times before. The stars spread overhead in their infinite blanket, and the sounds of the ranch settling for the night surrounded them. Horses shuffling in the barn, cattle lowing in the distance, crickets singing in the grass. You ever wonder how things might have been different? Mara asked, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. If Cordelia had kept me, or if a different man had come for me that day. Sometimes, Nathan admitted. But then I stop myself because I cannot stand to imagine a life where I did not find you. You are the center of everything good in my world, Mara. You and our children, this life we built together. That is what matters, not the paths we did not take. Mara tilted her head up to kiss him, soft and sweet. I love you, Nathan Cross. Thank you for giving me a choice that day, and thank you for being the kind of man who made my choice easy. I love you too, he said, wrapping his arms around her. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us, for making this house a home and this ranch a family legacy. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. They sat together as the night deepened. Two people who had found each other in the midst of darkness and built something beautiful in the light. The girl who had been sold at 16 and the cowboy who gave her freedom had become partners, lovers, parents, and best friends. They had built not just a successful ranch but a life full of love, respect, and joy. Years continued to pass, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. There were hard winters when they worried about the cattle, dry summers when the creek ran low, and years when prices dropped and they had to tighten their belts. But they faced everything together, leaning on the partnership that was the foundation of their success. Tommy grew into a man who managed the ranch alongside his parents, eventually marrying a girl from town and building a house on Triple Cross land. Claire did become a teacher, taking a position in Chico, but riding home most weekends to see her family. She eventually married a doctor and brought him into the family fold, and he proved useful for treating both humans and animals. Nathan and Mara became grandparents, delighting in Tommy's children and later Claire's. The house that had once held just one lonely man now rang with multiple generations of love and laughter. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party, inviting what seemed like half of Chico. People came from all over to celebrate the couple who had become pillars of the community, known for their fair dealing, hard work, and genuine kindness. Nathan stood with Mara in the center of their crowded house, looking around at the life they had built. "Did you ever think it would come to this?" he asked, gesturing at the celebration around them. "No," Mara said honestly. That scared 16-year-old girl could never have imagined this, but she hoped for it, deep down where hope lives even in the darkest times. She hoped someone would see her as human, as valuable. And you did. You saw past the circumstances to the person underneath. That made all of this possible. Nathan pulled her close, not caring that dozens of people were watching. You made it possible by being brave enough to trust when you had every reason not to. By choosing to stay, to build, to love. I am just grateful I got to be part of it. Claire approached with a glass of champagne for each of them. Mama, Papa, everyone wants to hear a toast from you. Nathan looked at Mara, raising an eyebrow in question. She nodded, and they turned to face their gathered friends and family. Nathan raised his glass. Most of you know our story, or at least parts of it. How we met is unconventional, I will admit, but what we built from that meeting is something I am proud of every single day. To my wife, my partner, my best friend, thank you for 25 years of love, laughter, hard work, and joy. Thank you for our children and grandchildren. Thank you for making the Triple Cross not just a ranch but a home. And thank you for choosing me, again and again, even when I leave my boots in the middle of the floor and burn the coffee. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mara took her turn. When I came to this ranch 25 years ago, I was broken and scared and had no idea who I was or who I might become. Nathan gave me time and space to figure that out. He treated me with respect and kindness when I had known neither. He loved me not despite my past, but including all of it. And together, we built something that has lasted. So here is to choosing love, choosing partnership, and choosing to build something beautiful out of difficult beginnings. And here is to my husband, who is still terrible at making coffee but excellent at everything that matters. They drank amid applause and laughter, then were swept into conversations and congratulations. But throughout the evening, Nathan and Mara found each other's eyes across rooms, shared smiles that spoke of private jokes and deep understanding, touched hands in passing as though reassuring each other that this was real. Later, after the last guest had gone home and the children had finished cleaning up, Nathan and Mara climbed the stairs to their bedroom. Mara sat at her dressing table, taking down her hair, and caught Nathan's reflection in the mirror. He was watching her with the same expression he had worn 25 years earlier, when he had placed flowers in her room and hoped she would choose to stay. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. He came to stand behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "I am thinking about how beautiful you are, and how lucky I am, and how I would do it all again exactly the same way if it meant ending up here with you." Mara covered his hands with hers, even the hard parts. The times we fought about ranch decisions or worried about money or struggled to balance parenthood with everything else. "Especially those parts," Nathan said, "because we faced them together and came out stronger. Every challenge we overcame made us more solid, more certain of what we had. I would not trade a single moment, good or bad, because they all led us here." Mara stood and turned to face him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I love you, Nathan Cross, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow. You are my home, my safe place, my greatest adventure." "And you are mine," he said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "Always and forever, you are mine as I am yours." They moved to bed, and even after 25 years of marriage, their lovemaking still held tenderness and passion, familiarity and discovery. They knew each other's bodies as well as their own, knew what brought pleasure and comfort, knew how to give and receive with equal grace. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Mara's head on his chest, Nathan spoke into the quiet. "You remember what I said to you that first day? In that office in town, you said a lot of things," Mara murmured, drowsy and content. "I said you could stay or go and I would respect either choice, that your life was yours to decide." "I remember," Mara said. "Those words changed everything for me. They gave me back my agency, my sense of self." "I meant every word then, and I still mean them now," Nathan said. "Your life is yours, Mara, not mine to control or direct. We built this together as partners, and that is how I want it to always be. So if you ever want something different, if this life stops fitting, I want you to tell me. Your happiness matters more than my comfort." Mara pushed herself up on one elbow to look at him in the faint starlight coming through the window. "Nathan Cross, I am happy, deeply, truly happy. This life fits me perfectly because we built it to fit us both. But I love that you still think about my freedom, still want to make sure I am choosing this every day. That kind of respect is why I fell in love with you and why I stay in love with you." "Good," he said, pulling her back down. "Because I do not know what I would do if you ever wanted to leave. I would respect it, but it would break my heart." "Then your heart is safe," Mara said firmly, "because I am not going anywhere. This is where I belong with you in this life we built from ash and hope." As the years moved toward the turn of the century, Nathan and Mara settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long marriage. They were in their 40s now, no longer young but not yet old, with silver threading through their hair and lines marking their faces that spoke of years spent squinting into the sun and laughing often. The ranch had grown to be one of the most successful in the region, a testament to their hard work and smart management. Tommy had taken over much of the day-to-day operations, allowing Nathan and Mara to step back slightly, though neither could fully retire from work they loved. They took more time for themselves, riding out together on Silver and Thunder's son, a gray gelding they had named Storm. They visited their children and grandchildren often, delighting in watching the next generation grow. They read together by the fire on winter evenings, traveled to Sacramento once for a cattle buyers' convention, and generally enjoyed the fruits of their decades of labor. On a warm evening in June of 1903, exactly 25 years to the day after Mara had first arrived at the Triple Cross, they sat on the porch as the sun set. It had become their tradition, this evening ritual of watching the day end together. "You know what today is?" Mara asked, though she knew Nathan never forgot important dates. "It is the anniversary of the day you came home," he said. "The day my life truly began." "Our life," Mara corrected gently. "We built it together." "We did," Nathan agreed. "But you were the catalyst, the thing that changed everything. You took a house and made it a home. You took a lonely man and made him a husband, father, grandfather. You took a ranch and turned it into a legacy. Everything good in my life traces back to you saying yes that day." Mara reached over and took his hand, their fingers interlacing as naturally as breathing after so many years. "I was so afraid that day. Of you, of the future, of everything. But you were patient. You gave me time to learn that not all men are dangerous, that kindness exists, that I deserved better than what life had given me. You taught me to trust again, Nathan. That is the greatest gift you ever gave me." "And you taught me that saving one person can matter," Nathan said. "I could not save Alina, but I could save you. And in saving you, I saved myself from a life of regret and loneliness. We saved each other, Mara. That is what love is, I think. Mutual salvation." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple, the first stars emerging overhead. Around them, the ranch settled for the night with sounds that were as familiar as their own heartbeats. This was home, not just the physical place but the feeling of rightness, of being exactly where they belonged with exactly who they were meant to be with. 25 years, Mara mused. Half my life has been spent here with you, and I would not change a single moment, not even the hard times. Nathan asked. "The year we almost lost the ranch to drought, when Tommy was sick as a baby and we thought we might lose him, the fights we had when we were both too stubborn for our own good, not even those," Mara said firmly. "Because they taught us, shaped us, made us stronger. And we got through them together, which proved what we had was real and lasting. Perfect lives do not build character, Nathan. Weathering storms together does." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You are a wise woman, Mara Cross." "I had a good teacher," she replied, smiling at him in the gathering darkness. They went inside eventually, drawn by the chill of evening and the promise of a warm bed. As they climbed the stairs together, Nathan's arm around Mara's waist and her head resting on his shoulder, They moved with the easy synchronization of people who had walked this path together thousands of times. In their room, they helped each other undress with the practiced care of long marriage, hanging up clothes and preparing for bed with comfortable efficiency. They slipped under the covers, and Mara curled into her usual spot against Nathan's side, fitting perfectly into the space that seemed made for her. "Nathan," she said into the darkness. Thank you." "For what?" he asked, though his tone suggested he knew. "For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me choices when I had none, for loving me when I did not know how to love myself, for building this life with me, day by day, year by year, for being my partner, my love, my home, for all of it." Nathan tightened his arm around her, holding her close. "The privilege has been mine, Mara. Every single day with you has been a gift I did not deserve but am grateful for anyway. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." "I know," Mara whispered. "I have always known." They drifted towards sleep, comfortable and content in the life they had built. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, keeping watch over the ranch and the two people who had found each other in darkness and built something beautiful in the light. The girl who had been sold at 16 had become a woman of strength, capability, and deep love. The cowboy who had offered her a choice had become a man who proved every day that kindness and respect were not weaknesses, but the foundation of everything worthwhile. Together, they had built not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love that would ripple through generations. A testament to what two people could create when they chose to see and value each other's humanity. As Mara fell asleep in Nathan's arms, safe and loved and home, she thought back to that terrified girl in the wagon, certain her life was over. If she could send a message to that younger self, it would be simple: hold on, choose hope. Trust that even in the darkest moments, there are people who will offer you light. And when that light comes, in the form of a kind cowboy who respects your choices and sees your worth, have the courage to reach for it. Because that choice, that moment of trust, could change everything. It had changed everything for her. And as the night deepened around the Triple Cross, the house full of memories and love, Mara smiled in her sleep, knowing she had made the right choice that day so long ago and every day since. The end.